Hey, it's Jeff Zito, and thanks for checking out another episode of the Celebrity Jobber podcast, our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/the @celebrityjobber. You can also follow us on Instagram, which is Celebrity Jobber Podcast, talking to celebrities about their big break, and if not for their big break, what they might be doing today. A lot of jobs from our next guest, Adam Carolla, very funny comedian, podcaster, and I've been a fan of his for a long time, especially when he had that show, The Man Show, of course, Loveline with Dr. Drew. That was definitely one of my favorites and an inspiration for me in the world of radio. But originally talked to Adam Carolla on episode 22 of Celebrity Jobber, where he talked about all of his past jobs, which you're going to hear about again, plus his very first job and his big break, which got him to pretty much where he is today. The newer part of this podcast is a job that Adam Carolla has these days, a brand new job. We'll talk about that, plus what his favorite job was, and maybe a philosophical discussion on the world of radio and where it is today, and how Adam has to be careful with some of his opinions. You know, saying the wrong thing today could get a lot of people pissed off, and they can cancel you real quick. So we'll get into all of that with my guest this week on Celebrity Jobber, the one and only Adam Carolla.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. What if these celebrities weren't famous? What would they have become? What was their first job? We're about to find out.
Yeah.
How's it going, man?
How are you doing? Good.
I'm good. Is this, I know that this is what you do. You talk to people. People talk to you. And I, apologize in advance that it's a schmo like me. It's not Brad Pitt or somebody more interesting. But you are the interesting one in this situation. So, you know.
I don't know that Brad Pitt's all that interesting.
Who is? Like, who's the most interesting person you've ever spoke to, either on the radio or your podcast?
Sean Penn is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Christoph Waltz is pretty interesting.
Okay.
Bryan Cranston is pretty interesting.
Oh, I'm looking forward to talking to him.
There's been a few.
You know why I think you're interesting is because... I do a radio show too. You're not just getting stuck on a podcast with somebody, but the podcast that we're on is called Celebrity Jobber, and it basically looks at celebrities and their first jobs. And you're a very interesting one because before your big break, you were somewhat of a Renaissance man. Is that true?
I was a carpenter for my whole career, and I was a boxing coach, and I was a carpenter. Those were my jobs before I got into show business. But I was a full-time journeyman carpenter. That's all I did for a living.
What was your first job, Adam?
My first job, technically McDonald's.
Okay. Now it's before they had the computerized ordering system when you had to talk to a real human.
Yeah, except for no one talked to me because I worked the grill. It's like, if you didn't think working at McDonald's was bad, it gets worse.
Right.
If you're standing at the counter all day, that's boring, but it's not brutal. Standing over that griddle all day, that's
yeah, brutal. That's got to be an acne producer as well when you're a teenager.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, they would say, don't eat that greasy pizza.
Right.
Your skin's going to get oily or whatever it is. I don't think there's anything to it. I think it's all genetic. I think acne is just basically a genetic issue. Some people get it, some people don't. And I don't think it matters how often you scrub your face or how many griddles you stand over.
Yeah, tell that to my wife. She's one of those that washes her face all day long. Adam Carolla, I got to tell you, this is really exciting for me. I followed your path, not as successful, obviously. You've got the most downloaded podcast in the Guinness Book of World Records. You've given me advice a long time ago, and that was about your podcast, being consistent. How has being consistent really made you, the level of podcasts that you have? How has it made you so successful just simply by being consistent?
Yeah, I don't think there's much difference between podcasting and working as a UPS delivery guy or being a CEO. I mean, just show up, be consistent, show up every day, have a good attitude, have a product, and, it'll take you in the right direction. I don't think that there's, show business isn't really much different than any other business. It's just show up, work, outwork the person. Everyone gets lost in sort of talent and God-given ability and all that. Guys like Jimmy Kimmel are funny and they're talented, but their key to success is their work ethic. That's really the key. Most comedians are lazy and drunk,
Right. What do you think your big break was? So, I've been reading a little bit about you. I'd love to know more about you as a boxing coach. I thought that was really, really interesting stuff. But here you are, carpenter, boxing coach. You meet Jimmy Kimmel. There's some radio bit you're training him for. Was that meeting with Jimmy Kimmel and that circumstance your big break to where, you got the Loveline gig with Dr. Drew?
Yeah, I'd say that was my big break. I never really think in terms of big breaks because it's kind of a myth. You start working, you start training, you do everything you can do, and then that's what I was doing. But if there was a big break, so to speak, it was when I met Jimmy Kimmel. But except for Jimmy Kimmel wasn't Jimmy Kimmel back then. He was doing sports on a local morning show, so he didn't really have much juice. He wasn't a star maker. No one listened to him back then.
It was Loveline that got you into the radio business, and then from there you're with Jimmy Kimmel and the Man Show, which I was talking to a coworker not too long ago. We thought that was just an incredible piece of television history. Do you think that could be replicated in today's atmosphere?
No, it's funny. People would always ask me, could you do the Man Show today? And for years, I wouldn't really have a good answer for them. And I thought of one just the other week. And so somebody said to me, could you do the Man Show today? And I said, I could do the Man Show today, but I'm not sure Jimmy could do the Man Show. And I think that's kind of where we're at as a society. If you work for a broadcasting company, if you're mainstream, you have to pick and choose what you say because your livelihood depends on it. If you're sort of an outsider and you're doing a podcast and you're doing stand-up, then you can say whatever you want, whenever you want.
So tell me a little bit about growing up, Adam. How was your life growing up? There's been some, I think it's Wikipedia. I think somebody needs to update your Wikipedia page. It says Adam Carolla, born in Los Angeles or Philadelphia. Well, let's set the record straight. Which one was it?
I was born in Los Angeles, but my dad's from South Philly.
Okay.
So, there was some thought that maybe I was born in Philadelphia.
Well, you seem like a northeastern guy. I'm sure a lot of people always, probably don't know. You ask you're from New York, or because you seem like that's your vibe. But if you're living with a father that's from Philly, I can understand how you would adopt some of his habits. So, growing up in L.A. as a young Adam Carolla, what was your life like growing up? Did you have a good childhood?
Not really. My parents weren't really that into their kids. Everyone was just poor and pretty depressed, and I just sort of left the house and kind of made my way. I just ate at other people's houses, hung out at other people's houses, played with other people's toys. I lived in a crappy little house with kind of depressed parents, so I just took off, and I just played sports, really. That's kind of all I did as a kid.
And you were a pretty good athlete. I hear, you were a pretty good athlete. You could have played football in college.
I got some college scholarship offers out of high school, not major colleges, UC Davis, Cal Poly Pomona, Marshall, actually, was a decent.
Well, that's pretty decent, yeah.
I didn't even know where Marshall was. I wasn't going to college. I was a bad student, and I just left high school and started construction.
So do you think if it wasn't for your career now, you ever look back and think if it wasn't for that chance meeting with Jimmy Kimmel that Adam Carolla could be a carpenter right now? Do you ever think about that kind of stuff, or is that just too far in your rearview mirror?
I imagine that I would have found my way into some form of comedy. Probably not, maybe not radio if I didn't meet Jimmy, but I was doing comedy. I was doing sketch comedy and improvisational comedy and stand-up comedy. So I imagine I would have found my way into something, but I don't know if I would have found my way into as much success as I had if I hadn't met Jimmy. I don't think I would have, or if I would have, it would have been a different direction. Maybe I would have worked as an executive at Comedy Central.
Right. You like doing stand-up? It seems like you legitimately like to be in front of a live audience. I see some of your podcasts. You do live. You travel to certain places, and you seem like you and a guy looking in from the outside doesn't look like you really want to be in front of people, but I guess you probably do, don't you?
I'm not for it or against it. I just do it. You know what I mean? It's a job. I'm not really. I don't have any problem being in front of people. I appreciate that they came out, paid money to see me. And I enjoy myself doing it, but I don't have to do it. I've never felt that I wanted to be, on camera or in front of an audience or anything. On the other hand, I'll do it anytime you want me to do it. So I probably have like a healthy relationship with it. It doesn't make me feel alive. It doesn't make me nervous. It doesn't change anything. I go, I get on a plane, I show up, I get paid. I appreciate that the people came out. After the show, I hang out, take a picture with everyone, and then I go back home, get my bathrobe, and watch TV.
There you go. You're just a regular guy. You think you're a regular guy?
Yeah, I'm pretty regular because of how I grew up and what my job was for so many years.
What about, I guess you're going to be at, is it Captain Brian's Off the Hook Comedy Club or at Rose Seafood in Naples? I have, by the way, a relationship with Captain Brian. So if you think that's a little sketchy, a grown man calling himself captain, he doesn't own a boat, I'm just letting you know I'm vouching for him. He's actually a pretty legit guy. He's a nice man.
I don't know where I'm going to be in Naples, but it's coming up. If you go to AdamCarolla.com, all the dates and all the clubs and the podcast and everything will be there. So anyone listening wants to come out and say hi, just go to AdamCarolla.com and you can figure it out.
I am really intrigued by Mr. Burcham as I have been watching some trailers to this new project of yours. Was this your brainchild, by the way?
Yeah, it was. It was a character I came up with years ago, and finally made it into the animated world. Yeah,
so tell me who this is based on, because there had to be somebody in your life that is Mr. Burcham. Who would it be?
Well, it was basically all the shop teachers I had when I was in junior high.
Okay.
They were all mean guys. They hated kids. They loved their shop. They loved the tools. They loved woodworking. They loved metal shop. But they hated kids. So that was basically the conceit. This guy loves woodworking, pretty much hates the kids.
Right. And how long have you been thinking about this, and how long have you been thinking about making it, animated?
The character is the very first thing I ever did on the radio. So the character is the first thing I did in show business, really. It's the first time I really ever got paid to do something in show business. So the character is a million years old. And then it was on a show I did called Crank Yankers for a while. And I've always wanted to do something with Bertram. I just never really figured out a place to do it, and I finally figured it out.
And then how did you come up with all of the Now, I mean, I know you're connected. I know you're in the business, but that seems like you got a big-time cast. Jay Moore, Roseanne, Megyn Kelly. Did it take you a long time to put all this together?
No, not really. It came together pretty well. A lot of these people were people I knew, people I'd worked with, people I was friends with. So that came together. It came together pretty well. I was pleasantly surprised how many people wanted to be involved with the project.
You've really been on the forefront of, the internet. And I mean, I say that because I remember when you first went over into the podcast world and really nobody was doing it. It may be a little oversaturated these days, but there's only a small amount of podcasts that make money. So tell me, the internet, how do you stay ahead of the curve with some of these ideas now doing a streaming web series?
I really, I wish I had I wish I knew the combination and the alchemy of it. I really just sort of move ahead and try to do stuff, and it kind of lands where it lands, I wish I was a better planner. I wish I was a little more technologically savvy. I wish I was all these things, but I'm really not. I'm really just someone who wants to go out and create, build things, and make things, and get paid, and let the kind of chips fall where they may.
Wow. It seems like you're a guy that has the inside track on what's coming next. I mean, you've had a lot of jobs. We talked before, and we talked about all of your jobs. Your first job, you were talking about being at McDonald's, boxing coach. You did construction, of course, the radio show. What do you think? All these different jobs that you've had over the years, which one do you think was your favorite?
I didn't like doing construction at all, but I'm glad to know the skill of building. So I'm very happy that I possess the ability and the skill of being a carpenter. And I really take pride in it. I sort of carry it with me. I was just having a conversation with somebody literally last night where they were looking at some little houses to maybe, buy and rent out or something. And she said, well, this one's a fixer-upper. And I was like, yeah, but that's easy for me. So I'm glad to have the skill of carpenter, but I'm much happier I got out of it. And for me, the thing I liked doing the most was radio over the years, I would say.
Would you say the radio that you did, Loveline with Dr. Drew, or when you were doing, stuff with, Kevin and Bean? What phase of radio was your favorite?
Well, Kevin and Bean was really fun when I first started in morning radio because Jimmy Kimmel was there, and it was all new, and it was all sort of a fun, exciting ride. All of a sudden I'm off the job site, and I put down the hammer and I picked up a microphone. And it's a dream come true.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine I'd be on the radio. I used to listen to the radio when I worked construction, but I never it was a fantasy to be on the radio. So that was all good. Loveline was always the best because it was only 2 hours. It wasn't 4 hours. And it was in the middle of the night. Not in the middle of the night. It was 10 at night. But I was always awake and, ready to go. Morning radio would be a little tough because, you'd get up at 5 in the morning. Sometimes you'd have a tie one on the night before. And I just wasn't, you roll in there. Who the hell wants to do comedy at 6:15 in the morning?
Right.
Loveline was like, I was there. I loved hanging out with Dr. Drew. And it was only 2 hours, and it was at 10 at night. Like, I was always, at 10 at night is when, 10 that's when the second show starts at a comedy club. So it's like I was ready to do comedy at 10 at night. I wasn't ready to do comedy at 7 in the morning.
Right. What do you think? What do you think about radio these days? A lot of people are talking about, I'm in the radio business. It's not easy. They're cutting, all these companies, major cuts, and, it's changed quite a bit, not only in the last 20 years, but it's changed quite a bit in the last 5 years, since COVID. What is your opinion on the current state of radio?
It's not what it was when it was at its zenith, but, neither are network sitcoms, and I don't know, are there really movie stars today? It's a transition. It's how life works. And, GM and Chevy and the Big Four and the Big Three were the only cars on the market, a few decades ago. And now there's a million different cars to choose from. And that's just life. It's just business. It's just time. It's just kind of how it goes. Johnny Carson, if you did a stand-up set on The Tonight Show, when Johnny Carson hosted, the next day, your career would change. And now, you do a 5-minute set on Jimmy Fallon's show, your phone doesn't ring the next day.
Right.
It's just kind of how it goes. It's like there's no one to blame, and there's really nothing to lament. It's just how it goes. Radio had literally 100-year plus run, and the internet sort of eats everything. And network, when I was a kid, there was 3 TV stations to watch. They dominated. The Dukes of Hazzard had 40 million viewers a week. It's just the way it was, and now this is the way it is. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. It depends on what side of it you're on,
Right.
But I wouldn't lament it. It's just progress.
It is. There's more choices. You're talking about the internet. My son plays college baseball, and his school is shutting down at the end of this month. And they said they win 2 more games, they'll be playing in the College World Series for a school that doesn't exist. And the internet takes this story 2.5 million views later. He called me the next day. There's 50 reporters, at his practice. So it is amazing. I see things, people going viral here and there. It doesn't really make sense to you until, it happens to you personally. With you and what you do and your beliefs and comedy, and Mr. Burcham seems like it leans, maybe against the woke people of America. Is there? It doesn't seem like you're a fearful guy at all. It looks like you doubled down. But is there any type of fear in what you do today, being on the internet and having, these people cancel you because they don't agree with you?
Yeah, I'm subject to the same thoughts and feelings and fears and trepidations as anybody, because I'm a human. I'm normal. I don't make my policy based on it. My policy is that I say what I think and what I feel and what I want. Do I feel negative repercussions or whatever that is? Yeah, I feel that. I just don't really have a choice in it. If something is happening like COVID and I know what's going on and I have feelings about it, then I share those feelings with people, and then whatever comes after that comes after that. But that I'm not really in charge of that part. I'm just in charge of the part where I tell the truth, make jokes, say how I feel, and whatever happens after that happens after that. It's not, a popularity contest we're running here. And, sometimes you'd be better off if you played it a little more strategically, especially in Hollywood. Hollywood is very tough if you start talking about how you feel about stuff and you're being truthful about it. You can definitely make a list or two and get into trouble. And it's definitely happened, and it happens a lot. It's probably not helping. But, at the end of the day, I'm a comedian. I have to say what I feel, and that's that. I'm not trying to intentionally agitate people, but I'm also here, COVID comes along. I live in Hollywood. Almost everything they told me to do and everything they told me to believe and say and think was wrong. So what am I supposed to do? Go along with them when they're wrong about everything? That's not my job. My job's to say something. Now, whatever happens after that, I can't control that. And it's not up to me to control it. You just say, your story is the virus came from a wet lab. I think it makes more sense that it came, I should say wet market. It makes more sense to me that it came from a lab that's up the street. So I'm going to say that, and then you're going to say, well, now you're in trouble. And I'm going to say, well, so sue me.
Right.
There's a lab that works on viruses up the street. You think it came from a pangolin in a wet market? It makes more. And by the way, you're shutting down everyone who said it came from a lab. Now I'm suspicious, and I don't trust you. So I'm going to say something, and then you go, "Oh, now you're in even more trouble." And I'm like, "Look, I don't know how this works. Here's what I think." And that's that. Or, ivermectin or wear a mask or 6 foot distance, whatever. They're wrong about every single thing they said. I just happen to point it out. And my thing is I'm not going to apologize for being correct.
Adam Carolla, he's his new animated web series. It's called Mr. Burcham, now streaming on Daily Wire Plus. Always a pleasure, Adam. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you heard Adam talk about, not having, the perfect childhood. Kind of grew up in somewhat of an abusive household. He got into sports, which kind of took him away from the crappy upbringing that he had. I don't think he resents it. Talks about a lot of jobs, being a boxer, a boxing coach, construction. Of course, we went into radio and the podcast, and of course, his first job being at Mickey D's, flipping burgers. But I find it so interesting that Adam Carolla, who is, I believe, in his late 50s, kind of really stays up on the internet. Of course, with his podcast being huge, this new endeavor, it's an animated web series, Mr. Burcham, which was based on Adam's shop teachers. They're generally a pretty particular breed, aren't they? Shop teachers. I remember one of mine, his name was Mr. Lutz, and he'd bring his dog in. His dog was named Knuckles. I don't know why I remember so much about Mr. Lutz, probably because he was such a strange guy. Anyway, that's who Mr. Burcham is based on. And what a cast. Adam Carolla, Megyn Kelly, Roseanne Barr, Jay Moore, Alonzo Bowden, and many, many more. You can check out the web series on Daily Wire Plus. Adam said his favorite job was being on the radio. He loved being on Loveline. It was on at 10 o'clock at night, so he could be funny. He was ready to get going. He mentioned like the second show at a comedy club. Those people are primed to laugh, ready to drink and have a good time. So he thought 10 p.m. on Loveline with Dr. Drew, his most favorite job. It's difficult trying to be funny in the morning. Just waking up, maybe you got a little bit of a jag on from the last night, a little too much whiskey or scotch or whatever it is you drink, and kind of tough being funny at 6 o'clock in the morning. So maybe not when he did his morning show, but he mentioned Loveline as being really probably his favorite job ever. And again, we talked a little bit about where the world of radio is today. It's not going the way of the dodo bird. But with all these choices out there, streaming choices, on-demand stuff, the internet, it just seems like radio is not quite where it was, forget 10 or 15 years ago, 5 years ago. So he shared his opinion on radio these days, not to mention, the new world that we're living in, especially as a comedian. You say the wrong thing, you piss off people, they try to cancel you. He says he's not really careful. He's just telling the truth, calling it like he sees it, and he'll accept the consequences, whatever they are. Big fan of Adam Carolla. I really love talking to him. And all our past guests you can check out on celebrityjobber.com, and you can stream us everywhere. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please subscribe. Would love a 5-star rating and leave a review. It's a great help if you care at all about helping me. Until next week, thank you once again for listening to the Celebrity Jobber podcast. We'll see you next time. I'm Jeff Zito.